Okay, let's mute this one. He'll mute that. Okay. Well, I guess we'll look at more alien stuff then, since nobody's on. Deb's picks. Let's share screen and okay, let's go look at aliens. What do we got? Black Bird of Chernobyl, Kerry Gordon, Tratham's Close Call. I don't know, should we start at the very beginning or should we just pick something else? Yeah, I guess we'll start at the beginning. We'll talk about Chernobyl. Black Bird of Chernobyl. I was 3 years old when this happened. April 1986. Location Pripyat, Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, Russia. I have a friend that came from Russia. It goes to my bar. A Chernobyl reactor disaster in which 31 died and over 500,000 people were involved, and the long-term effects continue to be recorded and monitored. Even to this day, 40 years later, it's still monitoring the site. I think people can be allowed to move back to reality. Only the hogs are radioactive. Everything else seems to have gotten back. Now, witnesses who have visited the area believe that spirits of those who died there still roam the area. The tragedy is fascinating on both a historical and scientific level, but also quite terrifying. Though I don't think this is quite an alien story. I think it's like ghosts. I deal with that stuff too. At the start of April 1986, people living and working at the power plant began to witness strange events. Sightings of a large black bird or bird-like creature and even headless man with large black wings and red eyes began to be reported. Sounds like the Mothman monster, kind of. It was later given a name, the Black Bird of Chernobyl. Witnesses had nightmares, threatening calls, and some claimed first-hand encounters with the creature. The strange happenings were reported and increased until the morning of April 26, 1986, when Reactor 4 exploded. Oh, so the disaster wasn't even done yet. Damn. Another reactor goes boom. The explosion sent a nuclear fallout of frightening proportions that drifted over Western Soviet Union, Eastern and Western Europe, Ireland, Scandinavia, the United Kingdom, and even North America. Oh, we all took a dose of radiation from that. Says all of this took a scarily short period of 48 hours. It was 400 times the level of Hiroshima, and the meltdown left fires and further explosions at the direct site. Damn, 400 times worse than Hiroshima. That's bad. Like a nuclear bomb went off, literally. Oh, they do mention Mothman. Because after the awful events, the further deaths of those trying to stop the radiating fallouts, there was no further signs of the Blackbird. It has been likened to the Mothman, a West Virginia phenomenon linked to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. Previously, this had occurred in 1968, and after no sightings of the creature were made either. Pripyat town is now abandoned by living human residents, but it's regarded as haunted. People have reported that they have seen apparitions and shadows at the windows of the city hospital. Andrei Kirksukov, I butchered that, whatever. A nuclear physicist from the University of Buffalo visited the site in 1997. He was at Reactor 4 sarcophagus, but was unable to enter thanks to the radiation. Even though no one was inside, he could hear sounds of someone screaming for help. They were shouting about a fire inside. He rushed to inform someone, only to be told that he was the first person into the control room for 3 years. If someone had gone inside before that, an alarm would have been tripped. Later in the evening, they were eating dinner outside an old building. A floodlight turned on in the room of the installation, but no one was inside. It was like a power surge. But as someone went to say it, the light was switched itself back off. This was written last year. Oh, that's the Blackbird of Chernobyl. Okay, let's go. Oh, let's go find some more stuff to look at. Crashes and recoveries. Yeah, oh, this is going to be long. There's even a Death Valley one, too. Del Rio. Drunk Colonel store. Let's go do this one. No, it's not too long. And then we'll go back and try the one that had 30,000 on it. It looked like it was like a year. Okay, this is in Cheyenne, Wyoming. This is near where King Cobra lives. It's his state. It's June 30th, 1952. My dad wasn't even born yet. Back in the heyday of like crashes and stuff. Just first, I should report that this is a third-hand. Oh, this is even a third-hand report. So we'll see what happens. Well, I guess the original guy's drunk colonel. So let's see what happens. Hey, my father told me about an incident which occurred while he was a sergeant in the Air Force. At the time, he was a driver for Colonel at Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne. My dad always told me to take this story with a grain of salt. One day, the colonel, whom my dad never named, we should have, but whatever, came back to the vehicle roaring drunk. Yeah, I know that's a lie. I do that all the time. Because he then told my dad a story. He never knew whether to believe or not. The colonel had gone to a UFO crash site. Apparently, he said that radar had tracked something that had come from the vicinity of Venus. When it hit the atmosphere, it did so at speed. There was a hole in the craft about 6 inches in diameter in its side, or burned by re-entry heat. And the insides are burned up. That sucks. Guess their ship didn't work right. Speculation was that it had been hit by a meteoroid sometime during the trip. 3 bodies were found, charred beyond recognition. Pieces of the craft were everywhere, including a metal sphere with the peculiar characteristic. When spun, even by hand, it became extremely difficult to move it. My dad couldn't tell me if that meant move as in gyroscopic motion or the inability to take it from place to place while in motion. He told me the story because of my interest in anti-gravity. So if there were other details, I was never told. Okay, that's interesting. I guess when you get roaring drunk, that's what you do. Earth was an alien prison before 30,000 BC. That's interesting. 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. Let's see. Everyone's heard of the Roswell crash, right? So let's. Oh, I got 2 of these. I don't need 2. So that's what it looks like from my end. Oh, interesting. That's what the stream looks like. Okay, the U.S. Air Force flight nurse interviewed an alien named Earl. They named the alien, I guess, Errol? Or I'm going to say Earl. Like Earl Doob. An alien named Earl Doob said Earth was an alien prison before 30,000 BC. The Roswell incident has always been a core of all aliens and UFO mysteries we have seen at the last several decades. well, I would say the last 80 years. Officially, it was never claimed that an alien craft crashed in New Mexico in 1947, but many people of that time stated that they had seen an alien craft that day. There are dozens of stories that tell us that aliens were rescued after the crash and possibly survived. It is evident that the government will always deny it. Still do to this day. They'll always deny it because they never want to admit they made deals with aliens in the 1950s, which I covered on here as well. But yeah, I've covered the aliens from the 50s or Eisenhower from the 50s and stuff. However, some individuals and officials believe the aliens rescue story and said the UFO crash was real, according to the experts. Yeah, who are these experts? Maybe we'll find out. From the notes and documents of Natilda O'Donnell McElroy, Senior Master Sergeant, Women's Army Air Force Medical Corps. I think she was actually interviewed for I don't know, it was like the Ancient Astronauts series. I think she was actually like interviewed for that. I haven't heard of her. So the interview, yeah, she interviewed an alien named Earl Doob, who told her where they had come from and why they came to Earth. Matilda was only 23 years old when she interviewed the alien through telepathy. Damn, that must be really creepy, having Earl Doob in your head. Or an alien, whatever, either way. That'd be weird. I know because I talked to Jacoba, but he's cool. It's like having Trump in your head. That's like awesomeness. She was the only person at the base who had the ability to talk with beings through her mind. That's pretty cool. In her interview with Earl Doob, she found out the alien was not a biological being, had a female-like appearance. I was not expecting that. And also had not been injured during the crash. Oh, yeah, it's kind of... I don't know, when your spaceship crashes, aren't you supposed to get injured? This Earl Doob somehow didn't. She knew that Earl Doob was the size of a small child, acted like a child, and was a man-child, and was the only survivor among 3 crew members. It was Chance Saunders, Cyrax, and Chris Chan were the other crew members of the ship that had crashed in New Mexico. Her body was made of synthetic material, which means she was an alien robot controlled by a higher order being. They didn't include none of the story in here? Let's see if we can find that story. There's got to be something about that story in here. I've heard. I think the aliens are from Zeta Reticuli, I believe. Well, this is long, so I'm going to look at the comments. If there's any. I guess there's none. It's too early. So I'm going to go through this whole thing. And it says the Roswell crash, also known as... Actually, let's make this bigger. A lot bigger. I don't know why the text has to be so damn small. The Roswell crash, also known as the crash at Corona, because Corona, New Mexico, is about 40 miles closer to the crash site than Roswell. Who knew? You know, no documentary about the Roswell incident ever even mentions a city called Corona. I guess even though it's 40 miles closer to the crash site, that's actually quite a bit. However, the crash debris was taken to Roswell Air Base, and that's the name of Roswell. In early July, W. Mac Brazel, the foreman of the J.B. Foster Ranch, rode out to check his sheep after the night of intense thunderstorms. Mac Brazel discovered a large amount of unusual debris scattered across one of the ranch pastures. He took some of the pieces of the debris, showed them to some friends and neighbors, and eventually contacted Chavez County Sheriff George Wilcox. That's your first mistake. Never involved the government. Suspecting that the materials described by Mac Brazel might be connected to it with military operations, Sheriff Wilcox notified the authorities at Roswell Army Airfield, subsequently renamed Walker Air Force Base, for assistance in the matter. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer at the 509th Bomb Group. Damn, we got that many bomb groups? Shit, we must really like blowing stuff up. Was involved in the recovery of the wreckage, which was initially transported to Roswell Airfield on July 8th. The Roswell Daily Record's headline story revealed that the wreckage of a flying saucer had been recovered from the ranch in the area. Says when questioned, Major Jesse Marcel disclosed that the wreckage had been flown to New Mexico to a higher headquarters. Colonel William Blanchard, commander of the 509th Bomb Group, issued a press release stating that the wreckage of the crashed disc had been recovered. Oh, the military did admit it. Okay. This is a second press release was issued from the office of General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force at Fort Worth Army Airfield at Fort Worth, Texas, within hours of the press release. Yeah, they went quick to try to cover that up. The second press release was rescinded, and the first press release had claimed that officers of the 509th Bomb Group had incorrectly identified a weather balloon and its radar reflector as a crashed disc. Well, shit, then why was there an alien? Who was the alien from the other story? I've heard that story on Ancient Aliens as well, too. Okay, the Ballard Funeral Home in Roswell had a contract to provide ambulance and mortuary services for Roswell Army Airfield. Glenn Dennis, a young mortician who worked for Ballard Funeral Homes, received several phone calls from the mortuary officer at the airfield prior to learning the recovery of the wreckage. Glenn Dennis was asked about the availability of small, hermetically sealed caskets for his recommendations on the preservation of the bodies that had been exposed to elements for several days. You really not getting rid of the smell at that point. His curiosity aroused, Glenn Dennis visited the base hospital that evening and was forcibly escorted from the building. This behavior only incited Glenn Dennis' curiosity, and he arranged to meet the nurse from the base hospital the following day in a coffee house. The nurse had been in attendance during the autopsies performed on several small non-human bodies. Glenn Dennis kept drawings of aliens that the nurse had sketched on a napkin during their meeting. This meeting was to be their last, and Glenn Dennis could learn no more about the alien bodies. As the nurse was abruptly transferred to England within the next few days. And on July 9th, the Roswell Daily Record revealed that the wreckage had been found on the J.B. Foster Ranch. Mac Brazel was so harassed that he became sorry he had ever reported his find to the Chavez County Sheriff. Yeah, you should be sorry you reported it. You had something, and you could have owned it. In the following days, virtually every witness to the crash wreckage and subsequent recovery efforts was either abruptly transferred or seemed to disappear from the face of the earth. This led to suspicions that an extraordinary event was the subject of deliberate government cover-up. Over the years, books, interviews, and articles from a number of military personnel who had been involved with the incident have added to the suspicions of the deliberate cover-up. Yeah, cover-ups don't really work, so you can't want to keep stuff hidden. In 1979, Jesse Marcel was interviewed regarding his role in the recovery of the wreckage. Jesse Marcel stated, It would not burn. That stuff weighs nothing. It's so thin. It isn't any thicker than tinfoil. and a pack of cigarettes. It wouldn't bend. Even tried making we even tried making a dent in it with a 16-pound sledgehammer. Damn, I thought 8 was the biggest. And there was still no dent in it. Damn, why can't we make cars out of this stuff? That'd be cool. They'll never break. Oh, they never break and don't make money. Oh, officers who had been stationed at Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, where the record was taken at the time of the incident, have supported Jesse Marcel's claims. Yeah, that was one tough weather balloon. So how did it break? Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., 11 years old at the time of the incident, accompanied his dad during the retrieval efforts. Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. has produced detailed drawings of hieroglyphic-like symbols that he saw on the surface of some of the wreckage. Dr. Marcel testifies regularly on his belief that a UFO of some type crashed in Roswell. Okay, we actually got an update here. So 50 years later, for almost 50 years, the events that took place at Roswell and the official explanation that followed fueled suspicion of a cover-up. The Air Force has always insisted that rumors of alien contact were just that, rumors. But new witnesses have continued to come forward claiming that the Roswell story was true. All the new accounts, the statement provided by a man named Glenn Dennis, is too compelling to be ignored. In 1947, Glenn Dennis was 22 years old and just out of college. That summer, he was working at a funeral home in Roswell. Now, 2 days before the UFO story broke, Glenn received a strange phone call from the Roswell Air Force Base. He was wanting to know what size hermetically sealed baby caskets do we have. Do we have specifically 3 foot 6 inches, or do we have maybe no larger than 4 feet hermetically sealed casket? That afternoon, Glenn was called to transport an injured airman to the Roswell base. When he arrived, he was surprised to find the base infirmary surrounded by military police. 2 ambulances parked at the curb immediately caught Glenn's attention. I looked in through the ambulance and I saw quite a bit of wreckage of some type. It looked like stainless steel that had come in contact with high degree of heat. It was a purplish bluish color. I noticed one large piece of the wreckage did not look like there was some Egyptian hieroglyphs. The confusion at the day that I was out there was so great that I did not think anyone really knew what the other man was doing. Then I don't think they even knew each other. It says, I think they were brought in from different military bases or whatever. According to Glenn, one of the officers told him not to repeat what he saw. 2 MPs came up and said, "Sir, we have to report you back to your mortuary." And that's when he said, "Look, mister, somebody will be picking your bones out of the sand if you go starting a lot of rumors." And that's your government. That's your government for you. You can't deal with secrets coming out. As Glenn was being escorted from the Roswell Infirmary by the 2 MPs, a group of doctors stumbled out of a storeroom overcome by noxious fumes. With them was a nurse who Glenn recognized. Hoping to find some explanation for the strange events at the base, Glenn Dennis asked the nurse if she could meet with him. The next day, the nurse agreed on the condition that Glenn never reveal her identity. According to Glenn, the nurse told him she was ordered to take notes during an alien autopsy. She said they were doing a partial autopsy. There was a crash bag that was open, and there was 2 very mutilated, very small bodies. The head was very large, and the eyes were set back. They didn't have They didn't have the earlobes or anything. There was like two canals, like two ear canals. There was only two orifices. There was no teeth. Like me, no teeth. In all, the nurse claimed to have seen 3 bodies. She was adamant that none of the bodies were earthly in origin. Glenn never saw the nurse again. A few weeks later, rumors circulated that she had died in a plane crash after being transferred out of the country. Yeah, that's the nurse they sent to England. So don't ever trust your government. They say you're going to get on an airplane, you're just going to die in a crash. They never trust your government. They're just going to kill you. They don't care. To this day, Glenn remains convinced that the details of her story are true. Well, I would take it as true, too. It wouldn't be killing people trying to hide this if it wasn't. But it's obviously true. There had to be some type of body present. There had to be something there. I don't think the nurse lied about it because I don't think she knew how to lie in the first place. And I just think something happened very unusual, and I doubt seriously if the world will ever know what happened. No, we will not know. Okay, how much is there's not much left. After that, I'll check. After this, I'll check the stuff. The Air Force has claimed that the alien bodies were actually dummies. Yeah, bullshit. How do they telepath with a dummy? That were part of a parachute test. Bullshit. There was a survivor, and dummies, I don't know, walk around and stuff and like telepath with people, talk about the prison planet from 30,000 years ago. Yeah, I call bullshit on that. It's not dummies. It was 3 aliens. It says those who participated in recovering alien bodies at Roswell kept silent for years. Finally, as initial reports of the Roswell incident began to appear in the 1980s, they began to confide to close friends and family members what they really had seen. Even then, they were uneasy, still afraid, getting into trouble. One participant, Captain Oliver Pappy Henderson, flew the plane that first spotted the bodies. Apparently, judging from what he told his family, he also saw the bodies up close. Sergeant Melvin Brown rode in a truck with the bodies from the crash site to Roswell Field and stood guard at the hangar where they were first stored. Several persons were at Wright Field, or who knew individuals who have testified to the arrival of wreckage and bodies at Wright in July 1947. One of these retired General Exxon says a top secret committee was formed to oversee the investigation of this and other highly classified UFO incidents. Nearly 20 years later, when he took command of the base, the committee was still operating. It had nothing to do with Project Blue Book, the poorly funded, inadequate project that apparently served little more than a public relations function. As I'm not sure what bridge is. I don't know what as Brig. I'm not sure what that is. General Bolander. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know what Brig means, but let me take a peek. Oh, hello, Dave from Dave Productions. I think it's Brigadier. I think it's Brigadier General Bolander, and indicated in an internal Air Force memorandum, UFO reports which could affect national security are not part of Blue Book system. Echoes of Roswell incident have been heard for decades in popular folklore about secret rooms and buildings at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where government personnel study physical and biological proof of alien visitation. Most, but not all, are a friend of a friend tales. He has a lot of those, apparently. I guess I read a couple of those already. I read one of them already about the telepathing with the aliens. Retired Wright-Patterson employee Norma Gardner stated before her death, Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave. She claimed to have cataloged UFO material, including parts from the interior of the machine that had been brought to the base some years earlier. She also said she had typed autopsy reports on the bodies of occupants. Once, moreover, she saw two of the bodies as they were being moved from one location to another. For her description, if she was telling the truth, she saw the Roswell entities. Oh, yeah, one of the aliens was named Earl, so I named it Earl Doob. And the crew is Cyrax and Chris Chan. So I think it's 3 in total. It sounded like it was 3 in total, so we don't have to. I guess King Cobra doesn't have to be part of this then. It'll just be Cyrax and Chris will be the other 2 members of the crew. But Earl Doob's the one that didn't die. They telepathed with it and said the world was a prison planet. Kind of like InfoWars. Before it was called InfoWars, it was called Prison Planet. In the mid-1960s, Senator Barry Goldwater, it's Brigadier General in the Air Force Reserve, asked his friend General Curtis LeMay about the rumors. Goldwater told the New Yorker April 25th, 1988 that LeMay gave him holy hell and warned him never bring up the subject again. Kind of scary, isn't it? Government's just going to make people disappear. All right, well, I'm back, so I'm going to go look for some more stuff. It's like, got alien abductions. We got a lot of abductions in here. Yeah, there's going to be a lot in here. 3-year-old girl abducted. 5 strange-looking entities abduct young man. I met an alien. If nothing else appeals to me, I'll do I met an alien. If nothing else appeals to me. So let's put that on the... I'll get that loaded up. Septaloids. Abduction by the septaloids. I really don't know what the heck that is. Oh, now I got some people, like names of people. Joyce Updike. There's so much stuff in here that's grabbing, so who knows? Krista Tilton abduction. Coolin abduction. Yeah, there is a lot. Lights out. Lifelong abductees. Marines abduction. Mating the woman from Venus. Munez case. All right, well, let's put the screen back up and let's start another one. Okay, let's get this thing loaded. Let's read some more. I met an alien. So did I. And I've got 3,700. I don't know. I got thousands upon thousands of pages of channeling logs with my alien pals. And they've got their incidents in the news too. Okay, so how long is this thing? It's not too bad. Okay, Mrs. E.E. Lawson. Why did it have to be a name? Oh, yeah, look what the description, location. Can't pronounce it in Kazakhstan. Pavlodar region, Kazakhstan, Russia, 1936. This is really old, like really, really old. It's like old like my grandma. That's old. Mrs. E.E. Loznia. I'm just going to call her Lozzie. I don't have a choice. The name's I don't really know how to pronounce that. Mrs. E. Lozzie recalled how as a teenager she had a strange and unforgettable encounter. 15 at the time. She was on her way to school along a deserted, snowy country road on a fine, cold winter morning just before sunrise. God damn, that's about school. School needs to start a little later than that. She saw a dark object some distance away in the air, moving in her general direction. As it drew closer, she could see that it was a man-like figure dressed in black and seen in profile. Its direction formed a 60-degree angle with the road. The man was of medium height, and black garment covered him completely. She saw no hands, and on his head was something like a helmet. He held his massive arms tightly against his sides. On his back was a device, something like a rucksack. Sounds like an astronaut, a black astronaut costume thing. Something. Could be Rokot, never know. They weren't kicked off the Earth at that time. Actually, they were in contact with the Earth at that time. He changed course and headed straight up for the student. She could see his right arm was slightly bent at the elbow. As he came closer, she was unable to make out any features on his face, only a black surface. Yeah, that sounds like Rokot. That sounds like Rokot technology to me. Here and now, she became aware of a rumbling sound that increased in intensity as it occurred to her that this thing might be more machine than man. The distance then was more than 120 feet. No more than 120 feet. Yes, that's not far. Is this thoroughly frightened? She turned to search for some place to run. There was no place to hide on the barren, snow-covered steppe. Yeah, Kazakhstan's like Central California. It's that flat. Flat as the Central Valley. There ain't nowhere to hide. Because when she turned, the figure had vanished as if into thin air. It occurred to her that he might have dived into a nearby snowbank. She fled for her home. The sighting had lasted about 1 minute and was so remarkable she could never forget it. So it wasn't too much of a sighting. Hey, this is from the 80s. I was already alive. Abduction by the Septiloids. Well, that's what a septiloid looks like. It's kind of scary. I don't want to meet one of those in a dark alley. Northeastern U.S. I'm glad I don't live there. Shit, these septiloids might be scary. The night sky is not certain of the validity of the following. It is interesting reading. Being directly involved with Operation Tango Sierra, I'm not sure what that is, involved the finding, tracking, and eventual capture of an extraterrestrial entity. Oh. Well, I don't know. I guess that'd be a declaration of war with certain aliens. The original operation began in early 1980 when an Earth female was identified by U.S. intelligence as being a so-called alien abductee. She had been abducted by a male non-human in 1977. It was her first abduction. The male non-human showed the abductee projections of alien life on another planet. The projection was from a small triangle device. The woman viewed this projection, which she described as images displayed in a three-dimensional holographic view. Damn. Sounds like I would like to get my hands on that. Let's hook it up, play some games on it. I'll tell you, if you ever get abducted, ask them about their gaming systems. They got this little triangle thing that can project things in three dimensions. Can you imagine their like game systems? You got to be entertained somehow on long journeys. The non-human entity never harmed the Earth woman abductee. Why can't we just give her a freaking name? I'll name her Jessica after, the Jessica. Okay. Never harmed Jessica. Jessica described this place as being a light bubble. She would sit inside the bubble and view these holographic projections with a non-human entity we'll call it Josh. The non-human entity is Josh. With Josh. On one occasion, Josh introduced Jessica to another male entity named Sockness, which Jessica described in debriefing details as not being human, as being very Chad-like and very attractive, not being on Earth, male abductee. Jessica called this other being a creature. Ooh, a sexy creature. Sockness preferred a medical examination. What? Sockness performed a medical examination on Jessica. Jessica didn't fully consent to the alien's examination because she was temporarily paralyzed. After the examination, Jessica was taken back to her residence. This woman was a single 23-year-old and a trusted, well-respected U.S. government employee. Oh, so Jessica has a job in this world. Huh. Wonder if the real one has a job. This is when Jessica brought up her abduction by a male alien named Josh to the attention of a coworker. The coworker contacted an office security official. God damn it, always getting ratted out, man. Ain't what friends do. Who then contacted U.S. intelligence officials. U.S. intelligence spent hours and hours vetting the woman's story, conducting thorough background investigations, performing surveillance, and administering several polygraph examinations. Her story was eventually deemed to be factually true and correct. U.S. intelligence then mounted a very special, highly classified operation to capture this entity, Josh or Sockness, either one. They wanted to capture them, who lived near Landover, Maryland. Okay, I'm done with the names. That was kind of funny. That was funny while it lasted. In early 1980, the 7602 Air Force Air Intelligence Wing Section 3 began a detailed, intense investigation involving the presence of extraterrestrial creatures having infiltrated the highest levels of the United States government. Oh, now you finally look for the reptilians that are ruling the world. Never did find them, did you, Mr. Government? Because you are just searching for yourselves. This information originated from several abductees who underwent intensive screening to determine their credibility. One particular female abductee who lived in the Washington, D.C. area provided a very believable, credible sounding account that she had been abducted by a human-looking man, an extraterrestrial entity who actually resided in Landover, Maryland area. Isn't that weird when the aliens actually already live here? They probably live in a suburb somewhere. It's like suburbs. Okay, with the assistance of the 4th District, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Man, they got offices for everything, don't they? It's like you make it up, there's probably an office for it. Highly classified operation was launched, codenamed Operation Tango Sierra, to find, detain, and debrief that human and determine whether or not he was an actual extraterrestrial creature or non-human and an imminent or potential threat to our national security. Dude, if the aliens wanted to hurt us, they would easily just take over this planet, and they already have. It's like, dude, national security, you're already infiltrated by aliens. It don't matter. You're already been infiltrated. Okay, the non-human entity was quickly... let's see the whole paragraph. The entire operation lasted 5 months and involved approximately 60 intelligence officers. Every intelligence gathering capability was utilized at the time. Ground aerial surveillance, telephone wiretaps, photographic evidence, and other undisclosed clandestine operations were all conducted, and some simultaneously in concert with one another. A non-human entity was quickly identified, carefully watched, photographed, and eventually captured near a shopping mall southwest of Andrews Air Force Base, Maryland, after it walked up an embankment. What? Aliens love shopping malls. I guess that's something else I add to knowing about aliens culture. Some aliens like shopping malls. It was quickly determined that this male entity had no special powers nor abilities. The male non-human voluntarily complied with the U.S. intelligence of APOSI special agents. Yeah, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, special agents, and went quietly and without incident. The male non-human was then remanded to custody and placed in captivity at Fort Belvoir Army Post in Virginia. Yeah, this happened when Chris was alive, too. This was in the 80s. Chris was alive, living in Virginia when this happened. Shit, there's a chance they could have passed by on the road. The non-human was interrogated by teams of AFOSI special agents over several weeks, and in total was questioned and intensely interrogated for many months by other agencies. Damn, no wonder why aliens don't want to land on the White House lawn. This is the kind of crap that happens. This is how we treat them. This is how we treat visitors. It was during this time that the male non-human disclosed its race, its home planet, and its reason it came to Earth. The entity basically cooperated and provided details of its life on its alien homeworld. That was good. The non-human entity was released on direct orders of then President Carter in late 1980. Yeah, maybe Chris wasn't actually alive back that early. They said 80s, which I thought this happened in the 80s. It was right at 1980. And subsequently left Earth and returned to its home planet and probably told him just how evil humans really are. Okay, hey, I could actually ask. There's a coordinates here. I could actually ask Jacoba next time I can channel Jacoba tonight. I can ask him. The male non-human originated from a star system Delta Pavonis, 19.92 light years from Earth, where it was the fourth planet from their sun. It is roughly the same size as our Earth. The captured alien was labeled as a septiloid. That was the identifying alien species name given to them by astrobiologists on the team. Okay. It says there is no clue as to why they picked that name as well as some of the other odd-sounding alien species names ending with the suffix of "loid." What about the broccoloids? They're just like, I don't know, alien broccoli that from the Powerpuff Girls. We got the broccoloids. So the broccoloids are real then. That means they must exist too, because we don't know all the other loids out there. The suffix "oid" is used in various sciences, meaning having the likeness of, or it is similar, which indicates that the thing is not identical to another, but resembles it, as anthropoid. The travel time to Earth was 18 Earth months using very complex propulsion system and time-space displacement travel mode. No, very complex propulsion time-space displacement. Could ask the Roca, but I don't think that's an Alcubierre drive. This sounds like something else. Just back then in the 1980s, scientists could not understand the alien propulsion system. Probably still can't, so I'll ask the Rocop maybe. And never saw a spacecraft. Well, it's a phone booth. Of course, you gotta know it's a phone booth, dude. Find the British phone booth in America. That's the spacecraft. When President Carter let the entity leave, he just vanished. I was never in the intelligence loop as to how he left or how he departed Earth. Yeah, he flew off in a phone booth. These aliens from Delta Pavonis have been visiting Earth for some 100 years. Not quite as long as the Rocock. Rocock came here in 1756 and landed in France, of all places. That's what my stuff has. That's what my channeling logs have. Apparently, they could assume a human likeness and easily live among us. That means there could be more of them. But they probably all left by now, knowing our hospitality is to abduct them and interrogate them for months. Yeah, I bet they all left. The team is not sure how they learned English so well, nor other languages. They're aliens. They install it into their brain chip. It says, you've got to remember this was extreme compartmentalization. We still suffer that to this day. We know just what we are supposed to know. There is much more to alien debriefing that we do not know. I would love to read this one, but I don't think we have it. From what we learned over the years, this race of alien beings originally came to Earth as explorers about a century ago. So 1880, that's 100 years before that. They came here in 1880, so they got to see the gold. They got to see, Old West stuff. So that's probably why we see Old West with aliens and why there was a Cowboys and Aliens movie. Maybe that's why there was a Cowboys and Aliens movie. Maybe that's what happened. With respect to the entity's employment, he worked as a records keeper for the U.S. Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. So that confirms it. We do have aliens employed in the government. That's 100% proof right there. This guy only worked for the U.S. Department of Commerce. In D.C., he was able to manufacture his own identification documents by assuming that of a deceased human. He was in a career that didn't require a high-level security clearance, thereby enabling him to escape the much greater scrutiny given his secret clearance level background checks and above. Although they possessed the human shape, form, basic anatomy, they were not human beings like us. Their actual normal real appearance was that of a hideous-looking creature that would most certainly scare, frighten, and terrify a normal person. Well, they call it a septaloid. What the fuck is septa? It's like 7? I think that's like Latin for 7. Okay, I gotta check my things. There's nothing there. Okay, above all, they did not have any extrasensory powers or abilities. They had no weapons. They never tried to harm humans. Their sole intent and stated mission was that they just wanted to study us and obtain the basic structure of the human body, anatomy, and social interplay. It's not known how many others of this specific type of aliens were among us, as that is specific, highly classified information. As in, they probably do know, but they're not willing to say it. It says, however, it's possible that there were more similar type operations than just this one. Operation Tango Sierra was just one operation that lasted 9 months. From start to finish in the D.C. area, U.S. intelligence had more such operations around the U.S., with one in the Southwest, which is here in California, like L.A., and another in the Northwest, which is above me. Goddamn, surrounded by aliens now. But the exact location details are unavailable. Regarding previous questions, they can't be answered, for you are relying on information from outsiders, the UFO community, who do not know what the U.S. government intelligence agencies know, and specifically what they are doing while handling alien contact. As for other visiting alien races, we know of 9 of them. The Ebens were the nicest, while the Trantaloids, I was about to say tarantula, so I'm kind of wondering what the hell is a Trantaloid, were the ugliest, meanest, and most dangerous. Well, it would be, I don't know, smart to let us know what an Eben and a Trantaloid are, because it's supposedly the meanest, ugliest, meanest, and most dangerous. So, I don't know. This world's pretty crazy. They're not even letting us know what's putting our lives in danger. And these things could be anywhere. Disguised as humans. It's like, shit, I bet Cyrox is a Trantaloid. Yeah, he probably is. Hey, Cyrox, if you're watching this, can you tell me if you're a Trantaloid? or an Eben. Like either which one of those. Which one are you? Because you are definitely ugly, mean, and dangerous to the general public. So you are one of these aliens. Admiral Stansfield Turner was CIA director during Operation Tango Sierra. We actually got a name here, Admiral Stansfield Turner. The CIA, DIA, NSA were all involved, as well as one or two FBI special agents. Man, this is like more stuff. I don't think even the X-Files can come up with this many like agencies. And they try. They have agencies up. They got quite a few. Okay, but they were never fully briefed. The lead agency was the 7602nd that operated out of Fort Belvoir. Those guys were the best of the best. I was the lead case officer for the intelligence part of the operation. I was very good at that. I was trained by the best and worked inside the old Soviet Union for many years. Oh, yeah, the Soviet space UFO files are released. I believe they are. But it's all in Russian, so we need someone who's... I do know someone who knows Russian. I do know somebody. So it is. If I can get these files, he can tell me what the hell they say. I just need to get my hands on some of this stuff. He can be like, damn, he'll probably freak out knowing what his government kept from him. Because he lived in communist Russia and came here in the 80s, I think, when I was like little. I could follow the devil around and he would never know it. Most of the UFO operations, clandestine that is, were performed by the 6702nd. In fact, the CIA came to them for their specialized training. The 6702 Air Intelligence Wing remained secret for many years, although it was a U.S. Air Force unit. The unit contained all branches of the armed forces except the Marines. We never could train those guys. Yeah, that was actually pretty interesting. Okay, let's go take a peek and see who's there. Nun's back. Hey, let's go look at some more alien stuff. Oh, this is probably not for YouTube, but I may have another one of these freaking mints. Oh man, this is long. Yeah, that's a long one. Everyone ready for a long one? Another long one. This time, Superstition Mountains, Arizona. I heard of like some crazy stuff about the Superstition Mountains. That place has got like ghosts and demons and stuff in it too. Got everything wrong with it. Okay, I guess the victim's name is Angie. Okay, Angie had 3 days off and was determined to make the most of her vacation. Okay, there is an actual reptilian rape within my channeling logs. This is another one. So if I ever find someone named, I think her name is Cecilia, something like that. If I ever find that name anywhere, then it would be the literal same incident that's in my channeling logs. Okay, the warmth of the sun of Arizona was a sign of the coming heat of summer. The breeze, a welcome change from the frigid blasts of yesterday. Every day off from work, she spent climbing in the Superstition Mountains near her home in Phoenix. Oh yeah, there's a treasure hidden up in those mountains. There's a treasure hidden in the Superstition Mountains. You guys should go look for it. You guys should go up there and look for it. The government will deny you. They'll actually go up there and stop you from finding it when you get too close. But I think the location is actually known now. It's just a matter of getting past the government. Her climbing was actually spur of the moment. not the disciplined mountain climbing she loved to watch on TV. In fact, she sometimes wondered what kind of craziness was required to do some of the climbing she had watched. Yeah, I've seen people climb mountains that have overhangs on them and stuff. Yeah, there is some crazy stuff on TV. I'm not a mountain climbing freak, Angie had told her friend Carla. Ooh, it was a C name, but not Cecilia. Hey, so I just like to poke around in the mountains and try to collect pretty rocks. Yeah, they're called jewels. Her collection of rocks included a mini mountain of rose quartz, turquoise, and other stones that might or might not have any real value. Yeah, she probably doesn't even know what all of them are. She had picked them up because they were pretty and had sparkled. I bet there is some rough diamonds in there and doesn't even know it. Her climb today had been inspired by a shiny object she had seen at the edge of a small canyon she was hiking through. Glancing at her watch, she realized that the sun was climbing faster than she was. Soon it would be time to start back to her car. She doubled her efforts, reaching the rim of the canyon, and was only a few feet away from the shiny material she had seen. After her struggle to climb all the way up there, she felt disappointed. She had hoped to find something worth carrying back home with her. She says the white quartz was nice and definitely shiny. It was too big to carry back with her. Damn, well, I guess it must have been too big. As she sat down near the outcrop and tried to break off a small piece of the quartz, taking a break from trying to wiggle a piece of rock loose, she saw a small cave partway up the opposite side of the canyon. Wow, that's a cave over there, she told herself. I wonder if the Indians ever used it or maybe some on prehistoric times. As usual, the thought of finding a previously unfound archaeological site set her thoughts afire. Quickly, she slid down the canyon wall she had laboriously climbed and started up the opposite wall where she had needed to struggle for every upward inch on the first climb. Now it almost seemed like she was walking up the garden path. And never before had climbing been so easy. The pocket flashlight she had clipped to her keyring didn't reveal much when she flashed into the shallow cavity. She entered the cavity, which really looked more like an overhang than a cave, and examined the floor more carefully. Since there were no bones or any other indication that a snake or any other animal had been there recently, she decided it was time to take a break. So deciding, she sat down on the floor of the cave and drank some water from her canteen. She leaned back against the wall, closed her eyes, and breathed a sigh of relief. The dimness of the cave was welcome relief from the glaring sun. She got up to leave the cave. It would soon begin getting dark, so she didn't want to rely on her flashlight while climbing back down to her car. Taking a step toward the entrance, she glanced down and saw something shining on the ground. Leaned over, she peered more closely at the ground and did not see the green claw-like hand reaching to grab her until it was too late. A green clawed hand. That sounds a lot like Joe Biden before he became senile and got his nails clipped. But it got her. It's just feeling the cool grip on her hand. She gasped in surprise. Says, "Oh, you frightened me." She gasped in surprise when she looked up at a reptilian face. A green reptilian face stared back at her. She tried to laugh, thinking someone was wearing a mask. "Charlie, is that you?" The nervous giggle turned into an attempt to cry out. The cry became a horrified, silent scream. Then darkness overwhelmed her. It says, waking slowly, she heard a strange barking and chirping sounds near her ears. She tried to get up, but found that she couldn't move her arms or legs. She was immersed in a gelatinous substance. The chirping sounds soon She soon discovered there were voices as they spoke to each other. Feeling a hand on the inside of her thighs, she struggled to open her eyes. Managing to open one eye a little, she saw men with lizard-like faces. She felt the heart. She felt the heart sinking, mind-wrenching feeling of absolute horror for the first time in her life. Attempting to scream, she choked and managed only a stifled gurgle. With both eyes now open, she watched as several greenish reptilian men attempted to disrobe her. Her eyes. Maybe women should wear chastity belts when they go in the Superstition Mountains. There seems to be a lot of reptilians living up there. Her eyes observed the strange faces carefully. They seem to be a strange blend of human and serpent. So these are the smooth-scaled reptilians. That's what the Obsidian Draco is in my channeling logs I've been describing. He's one of these guys. He's an obsidian. He's black, like jet black, shiny scales. So this is like serpent, which is probably referring to them being shiny. They have like shiny scales. The wide slit eyes almost glowed with a yellowish brightness, with glistening straight-sided vertical pupils. Their broad, flat noses ended in flat nostrils that flared slightly as they snorted while examining her. Some of them had a very wide mouth with many folds of skin, while some had small mouths with no folds. Angie wondered if extra folds showed their age. Their small, rounded ears, which were set high on the head, had no lobes. They were 3 prominent ridges on the top of their cone-line heads that resembled large scales. So they had these ridges on. They had like ridges on their heads. I think the Obsidian Draco had ridges too. I believe, if I remember, he had ridges too. And he's evil. He's extremely evil. He's never done anything good in any of my channeling logs. I could go through it later if people are interested in finding out more about the Obsidian Draco and that stuff, but it's pretty scary. She knows that the scales were a different color than the skin on the head, more like a khaki green that tapered to gray-green on the back of the head. Their faces were smooth with narrow chins that were pointed rather than rounded. They really were snake-like. 2 entities wore either a gray scarf or a wide ribbon draped over their shoulder. I have a picture that shows reptilian clothing. So they have like they have a scarf or a ribbon. They don't really wear clothes. Their clothing is just a scarf or a ribbon thing that's just wrapped around them. That's it. That is their clothing. There's under the soft-looking ribbons, they wore these ones have a jumpsuit, a white jumpsuit with insignia that showed a curved dragon with a 7-pointed star in the middle of it. So I guess it's a dragon. I guess it's a dragon like this and has the star thing. The other reptile men wore black uniforms with the same insignia. Damn, I should have kept the other one open because it had the aliens. This one's got more detail though. This could be more stuff to ask the aliens. That's the Rokot. The tall white-skinned lizard man. These white Dracos. I have heard of white Dracos before. I have heard of them. White Dracos also been seen at Dulce, Los Alamos, Kirkland Air Force Mega Base, wore a burnt orange jumpsuit with insignia on the left side. Yeah, I've actually heard of these guys. I think they made these in V, that TV series V. I think some of the aliens wore it with orange jumpsuits. That might have been where I saw that. And they had a weird symbol on them too. There was a black inverted triangle. The triangle of the Rokot's this normal, so it's not inverted. There was a black inverted triangle, the round dragon with star, and an oval with moving stars on it. She felt fascinated by that one. It was like watching a 3D movie in miniature. On the right side of this uniform were 3 black bars on a silver disc. On the left cuff of his sleeve, he wore a row of inverted triangles with 3 lines cutting through it. I could actually draw this shit. The white-skinned alien stood beside her right shoulder. This man with white skin had blue eyes. Chuck, were you hanging out with this lady at an alien base you're not telling us about? Is this your mysterious past? Well, when you get on here, I'd like to ask you about that. What were you doing at that base? They said a white dude with blue eyes. Okay, she winced in surprise and shame that he should see her laying there naked and helpless. She noted that he was taller than the others, being nearly 7 feet tall. Yikes. That's huge. That's my boyfriend, the lady boy I'm pictured with. He's 6'3", I think. And he towers. I can't imagine 7 feet. That's got to be near the ceiling. And his eyes looked gentler, or at least not as threatening as those of the green men. I don't think I even checked how long this was. Help me, she pleaded silently with her eyes and prayed he would understand her need. He picked up a round box and held it near her head. Something cold touched her forehead, and she felt a wave of peace wash over her. No longer fearful, she watched them with a strange calm. Trying to deny her predicament, still half convinced she was being held by a group of pranksters, she looked past the men, trying to determine where she was being held. She discovered she was in an oval room about 15 feet across. The low ceiling was domes with deep ribs of soft pale purple. Weird. From those arched ribs, a wild light shone. I guess we'll just go with it. From those arched ribs, a wild light shone. The light was bright but not harsh. On her left, lights of amber and blue flashed on the wall. Man, it sounds like that might be in some kind of spaceship or something. A counter or bench with instruments and appliances was visible from the corner of her eyes. She strained to turn her head, but it wouldn't move. She looked to her right beyond the tall white man and noticed pipes with strange sacks or maybe misshapen balloons hanging from them. Probably artificial wombs. This is what it is. It's probably a breeding facility. But for some reason, the reptilians and the Greys are into that kind of stuff. They're really weird. They are really into that kind of stuff. While trying to recognize the shape of the bags, she realized some of them were moving. Angie remembered seeing her dog's belly moving that way when she was near full term with her puppies. Like I said, breeding facility and artificial wombs. Another wave of horrified fear hit her deep inside her mind. She wanted to panic, but couldn't. It was like there were two minds inside her. One was calm and the other horror-stricken. The calm side was in charge of her body, while she could feel the beating of her heart much more easily than she could feel the horror welling up in her mind. With calm detachment, she wondered how her body could be so calm when God only knew what was going to happen to her. Angie watched with curiosity as one of the lizard men undressed and approached the end of the table. He was muscular and had scales on his chest and lower stomach. Like all men on Earth, he was a fully equipped male. Okay, so reptilians do got external genitalia. Because there's no reptile or lizard, and most birds have internal genitalia as well. Only waterfowl that I know of, only waterfowl have external genitals, but only when they're mating. But this thing has external genitals like a normal human male would. So it's clear they clearly have no evolutionary past on Earth. So that claim they make, saying, "Oh, Earth, we used to live on Earth." No, they didn't. They're lying. They evolved elsewhere. But what was worse, he was an aroused male. Okay, now we're getting into some really bad stuff. This is going to get really bad. Take a peek. Okay. When his green-gray hands touched her, it's kind of like describing a corpse, but this is a lizard. Lizard mitts. When his green-gray lizard mitts touched her, there was no doubt in her mind what he was going to do. A primeval fear overwhelmed her, an artificial calm. Something's burning. Building behind me might be fire nearby. Smells like burning. She began to scream and found superhuman strength with which to fight off the jello-like feeling. Yeah, remember, she's supposed to be immersed in some kind of gelatinous stuff, too. So, it's like she's on a bed. Now she's got this gelatinous stuff going on. Kicking and biting like a wild animal, she lashed out, hitting anyone near her. The lizard men quickly subdued her with a blue light that rendered her unconscious. Yeah, her last awareness was the weight of his body and sick awareness of his penetration. Sick, mentally ill aliens going for the other species. When Angie awoke, she was in her car. She looked around her, feeling confused and wondering why she was driving her car. God damn. They took her from the cave to her car. She didn't even wake up where they found her. She felt that she had been out to do something, but couldn't remember what it was. She took her head in an attempt to clear out her cobwebs, then struggled and drove on home, feeling dazed and disorganized. At home, she suddenly had the urge to shower. Well, yeah, you should. When she stepped out of the shower, she found she had scrubbed her body for over 2 hours. She felt shaky and angry for something she couldn't recall. As she put a frozen dinner in the microwave, but only picked at the meal. Then she turned on the TV, but couldn't watch it. Still fighting the day's feeling, she went to bed. The next few days she spent in bed, refusing to answer the door. Finally, on the fourth day, her sister Susan let herself in with a spare key Angie had given her months ago. Susan took her sister to the doctor, who said it was just the flu. Yeah, sure, it's always the flu. And then she would be fine in a few days. It's already been a few days. It's been 4 days. God damn, doctors, what's wrong with you? Okay, Susan took Angie home with her and, refusing to listen to any protests, put her to bed. During the week of her stay, Susan noticed that Angie had several nightmares every night, on which she woke up screaming. On Susan's day off, she offered to go mountain climbing with Angie. With a shudder of fear, Angie refused. She refused to even look at the mountains she had loved all her life. When she had recovered some of her usual frame of mind, she moved back to her own apartment and returned to work. She quit after 3 days when a customer brought a lizard into the store. She had no idea why the lizard frightened her so much. They had always been a part of her life in the desert. Generally, she just ignored them, but had no memory of what was keeping her in fear. Realizing she needed help to overcome the strange new fears, she asked a friend in Phoenix if she could find a hypnotist. She began therapy the next week. During the first session, she discovered she had been raped. It took 2 more sessions to bring out the reptilian rape. It was such an ordeal that she cried with all of her pent-up fear until her voice was a harsh whisper. A therapist at first thought she was transferring the men who had raped her to the reptilian man in the attempt to refuse reality. He quickly realized that as strange as it was, Angie had been raped by an alien reptilian man. His training had left him ill-equipped to handle this kind of case, but he rose to the challenge. Today, his former patient leads quite a normal existence in a small town near Phoenix, but she no longer climbs the mountains near her home. She doesn't want to speak to anyone about it and will refuse interviews if someone finds her. She sent me her story with the hope that there were other women who have gone through the same or similar experiences who hesitate to seek help from a hypnotist. She want to encourage those women who haven't yet remembered their ordeal to seek competent help. Angie feels good about herself now. She doesn't worry about the aliens anymore. She doesn't know why they did it. Was it by choice or by happenstance? Maybe they watched her for years, and maybe they still visit her. She is no longer concerned for her own safety. She knew it. They wanted to find her. She will be helpless to stop it. Still, she avoids the mountains. Okay, I'm actually going to keep this and log. And I am going to come back on tonight. It's going to be really interesting because I'm going to talk to the Rokot about that symbol and try to find out the actual faction from them. Because the Rokot actually have an alliance with the Reptilians. And they've had, it took me to break that alliance. I had to break the alliance because I was not going to maintain it under my authority as Emperor of the Rokot. So story is how big? Can't be just one page. I knew it's more than one page. He's lying to me. It's like 5. Put that down there. And okay, that was pretty harsh. That's some pretty heavy reality there. So we can. Let's go into my own sighting. Let's go dig up mine then. Angie's not the only one. I got my own stuff. So we'll go to. Imagine we'll go into my abduction incidents. Because mine's pretty weird. I mean, really weird. Okay. Damn. Where is the chest? My lips are hella fucking dry. Okay, just the freaking water I need. This is. Yeah, it just talks about the stuff that I have. My Kitasuna images. I literally do have a photograph. I think, yeah, I will. I'll read my own experiences then. Okay. If you will not accept this proof of Kitasuna's existence, then there is nothing for you. There's nothing you will accept. I have been to Kitasuna on several occasions, but what transpired is personal. I was taken there to witness certain events and meet 2 leaders on Kitasuna. I saw cities of Pathade and Kitasuna Toki. These are the 2 main political and financial centers of the Rokot Empire at the time. Both are spectacular cities with much to offer the visitor. My goal in life is to return to Kitasuna and join my kind for their final march to glory as they expand their empire into this galaxy. No matter how many leaders pass over the Rokot throne, they all seek to conquer, and that is a driving factor which never changes. Rokot are extremely dangerous towards humans, and staying on Earth is not an option. The jewel of my collection is this image of Kitasuna with stars. It was taken by my coven leader. Sadly, she took the secrets of her abduction to the grave. Yesterday, I read about my coven leader. Her name was Aegean Cian, that one that got ripped up like a sheet of paper. That story. She's the one that took the image. For her to have access like this must have meant she had struck some kind of unholy deal with the devil. The storm system showing on this image of Kitasuna is a storm called the Venori called Ragnish Rock. That's why where we get our Ragnarok from. Because the Venori are elves, the same ones the same ones that were on Earth in ancient times. From Norse mythology and all that. The elves, Venori, they're the same thing. They're actually aliens. They know this storm can cover the whole planet and is caused by fluctuations in solar output. So I'll scroll over the image slowly so you guys can really get a look at this star field and stuff of this Kitasuna image. And there's Kitasuna. And that's the storm. You can see the storm, the big eye. It literally looks like an eye on the side of the freaking planet. That's a big-ass storm. And those are stars not in our galaxy. Those are stars in Andromeda. None of these stars are in our galaxy. They're all in the Andromeda. This is an image Agent Sin took of Kitasuna, but she forgot to turn the lights off in the room. She was taken by starship to Kitasuna to do something in secret. Never did find out exactly what. And nobody seems to know. I will not know what happened because the Rokot are keeping it secret from me, and even my force channeling technique does not pry the answers from their minds. So that's Kitasuna from inside a spaceship. Like literally the glares and everything on the window. Okay, this is a shot taken again by my Covenant leader. This image shows a Toma mothership emitting some kind of white light upon the surface of the planet. This was during an attack in 2011 where the Toma were planning to stop the Rokot but failed. So I'll zoom in and there's a... Okay, this is really interesting. Yeah, you can see the ship. You can see the red dot of the ship, of the size of that thing's huge. I think it's got to be like 100 miles. And there's a blue one up. There's a blue speck up here of another ship or some other object. So this really shows the alien stuff it's legit. There's another object up there too. Never even noticed it either. There's another speck. That may be from the camera itself, because I don't know. That red thing is definitely not the camera. It's definitely an object. The blue thing, I don't know, and that white dot, I don't know what it is either, but that's Kitasuna. This is the closest anyone has gotten to Kitasuna with a camera. A later chapter about Kitasuna explains the atmosphere in detail. What we are seeing is a clear day with only the icy haze masking the surface. There is almost a hint of green on the top of the image. So that's the planet with a different camera. Kitasuna appears green in closer images than those from greater distance. The Rokot call this planet home, and they have thriving civilization on its surface. So that's the planet from, that's the closest I think we're ever going to get. And this is my journey. So I got a picture of Cygnus X1. That's it, right? Let me check my stuff. Can't do both, so I can check. Hey, Biggie. I'm sorry about what happened to your partner and all that. That really sucks. When I get done with like everything, I'll start letting people on. But right now, I'm not letting any guests on. But it's great to see her watching and seeing all the alien stuff, even though you've already seen all this, you've seen all of it before. Well, I'm going to read. This is my alien abduction. We just read what happened to that woman. So I read at least that abduction, the one where that girl, the 15-year-old in Kazakhstan, saw an alien. And I guess we're going to read my alien encounter. Okay, I was taken on the night of February 12, 2007, at a time I do not really know, because something was different. I was asleep and I was awakened by a being made of light that touched me, and the feeling was like static shocks on my right arm where the being touched me. I woke up and I was lying on a bed in a room made of metal walls and had computer consoles along the far side of the room. The walls had plumbing and tubes like a World War II submarine. This would be the best likeness I could think of. The room was dimly lit, and the computer screens provided most of the light. The light entity spoke into my mind with thoughts, and she told me who she was, and her name was Shekinah. She told me to get up and follow her to the bridge. I sat up on the bed and stood up. I felt a bit dizzy and did not know why. She put her hand on my forehead and the dizziness went away. Well, later I found out the atmosphere of the ship was slightly different than ours. So that was part of it. She somehow knew before I told her. The door to the room opened and I walked slowly toward it, and Shekinah said, "Come this way. I went with her through the corridor, which had pipes and valves all along the walls and ceiling. The ship had long corridors and many doors. It looked big. I walked, but she kind of floated a few inches off the ground. As we made our way to the bridge where they were going, I saw other light beings moving around the ship. I asked her if I was the only fleshy being on the ship, and she said yes. She told me about why she came here. She talked about the Niburian Council had attacked their largest ship that came here for another human. She told me the attack was in late 2000. They were building a base in our galaxy to prepare for something, but would not say what it was. We walked for about 5 minutes. That would be, I don't know, about 800 feet. It takes me 20 minutes to walk a mile, so quarter mile at best, at longest. Maybe less than that, because I don't think I was going full. I don't think I was going full tilt. Okay, we walked for about 5 minutes to a large room with a ring of 6 15-foot tall tanks of blue liquid that reached to the ceiling. There was a large circular railing in the center of the room. She told me this is the power core of the ship and it is the center of the ship where all the corridors meet. We walked to the center of the room and stepped through the open spot in the railing, and the floor shifted. The platform lifted into the air and made a buzzing noise as it did. A porthole opened in the ceiling of the room, and I was lifted through it onto the bridge. The platform stopped, and I saw the bridge cockpit-like structure in the front of the room. It had 2 seats next to each other, with light being sitting in them, with other figures embedded, with their fingers embedded into what I thought were the controls of the ship. Behind the pilot was a large table with a hologram star map of the Milky Way. The Shekinah, as is pronounced, said it contains the ship's path through the galaxy, and that the red line headed to the center and heading across to the other side. That's Cygnus X1, and it's binary. It's his binary partner. Orbiting, it's eating star. As we know it is. It's what artists say it looks like. But that's an actual photograph of it that I took. She took me to the front of the room and told me to take a picture of the star and black hole pair. She did not let me take a picture of the ship's interior or anything that would help the infidels, as she called them. I think she meant the Earth governments. I lost track of time, so I cannot say how long I was standing at the ship's bridge, watching the stars breeze by like fireflies. And there's a picture of the underside of the ship. There's actually a movie clip of that I can pull up. After we got to the center of the galaxy, it had many stars. I could not see how we could dodge them all and get to the center where the supermassive black hole is. As we got closer, you can actually see the stars around the black hole moving across our field of view. Shekinah told me that something special was going to happen here. Shekinah told me a very large ship was waiting for our arrival, and it was a Habitat-class carrier, the largest ship the Rokop built. She said inside was a place called the Heraldic Temple. It says, we were called to meet the high priestess, there for an event like no other. I could see a star moving in the wrong direction from the others and knew it was not a star, but the ship we were heading towards. We got closer to it, and it just got bigger and bigger. When I came real close to it, and our small ship was dodging towers and protrusions on the hull of the large craft. We came to the top of the ship, and a large spaceport was prepared to receive us. They had landed on the ship, and I was in on a giant elevator. Yeah, they landed the ship. I was in on a giant elevator, and it lowered us into the massive craft. I'm going to take a look around the chat, and I'm going to load up the movie. I'm going to load up the clip that has this. This is crazy. This is trippy. I have it in here. It's yeah, let me find it. I need to make these bigger so I can actually see what's in here. I need to be able to see what they are because I don't know the name of it. This is a MPEG. It should play. Let's play it. Let's see the alien spaceship go round and around. And it won't do it. Let's just see what the default is. Not working. This is no good. It's no fun. It doesn't work. There it is. The big, whirling, swirling, giant spaceship. That's the spaceship, everybody. It's one of the many videos and stuff of it. I used to have a lot more. I even got transportation of them flying the smaller ship, but that's the entrance to the big ship. So we are okay. I felt the gravity change, and I got slightly heavier. Shekinah was standing behind me the whole time. She told me to go back to the lift platform, and we would be taken to the ground. I did as she said, and the platform went down 3 decks on a small ship and through the bottom, and I stepped off onto the large holding area for ships. This must be where they park all the ships used by these light beings. I saw at least 100 ships right away and saw that there were many more behind those. The whole room appeared to be made from a crystalline structure. Light came from the structure of the room. The ships were saucer, sphere, cigar, star-shaped. The ship I was on was unique because it was 6-sided and looked like black glass. The ship was very jagged, had a very jagged appearance, like it was crudely chipped out of a larger piece of glass. It was so black I could not actually see details on it. As we walked away from the ship hangar and went to a small personnel lift, Shekinah said this would take us to the habitat area inside the ship. The lift went sideways down a corridor that slowly curved downward. This corridor was smooth like glass and reflective. Light seemed to come from every point on the walls. It was blue in color and it glowed like it was hot, but it was not. The corridor seemed to be one continuous piece for the whole trip. We went fast on this lift, something like 200 miles an hour. The weird thing was there was no wind at all. After about 10 minutes, we got to the bottom of the corridor. The bottom of the corridor opened up to a port for sailing ships. A boat was waiting for us. It was like a medieval sailing ship. Never would I think aliens of any kind would have a wooden sailing ship in operation. We walked to it and the wharf, and a fleshy person dropped a rope ladder for me to climb aboard the ship. The ship had fleshy people on it. It says they were really tall and dark skinned. I actually later found out those were Pathadians, which are all over. There's descriptions of them throughout my book, throughout my channeling logs and encounters with them all over the place. The men working the ship were all the same kind of people. Shekinah stayed behind at the wharf where I left on the sailing ship. Fleshy refers to physical flesh and blood people. Kind of. Damn, I was always descriptive. The ocean was very beautiful and calm. I could not tell from the habitat that I was in a ship. I could see land and knew it must be an island spoken about so much. I knew I now got to see it for real. The sky was blue and sunny with few clouds. How do they get weather inside a ship and the sun to shine like the real thing? As it took a few hours to reach the port on the island. This was where Aegean said she lived. She's the head of my order on Earth. Well, not anymore. I am. All right, I got my own now. Says I could recognize some of the features she described were on her property. She had a lighthouse on a stony tower with a natural stone bridge leading to it. When I saw that, I knew this was Aegean's home. Excuse me. We came to the harbor, and a few boats came out to lead us into port. It took some time, so I tried my camera while I had a view of the whole thing. The battery was dead, so I wanted a picture for my desktop image. It would have been worthy of a desktop image. The camera wouldn't have done it justice, though. They didn't have 4K at the time. This was 2007. The best they had, I think, was like 2 or 3 megapixels, and that wouldn't have done it any good either. After the ship was tied down, the people in town came to greet me and the sailors from the ship. 2 strong men brought a stepping ramp to the side of the ship, and we got off the ship. Another light entity was waiting in the crowd. She telepathically told me she was the high priestess of the heraldic temple in Merota. I believe it's the name of the city on the island. I knew what the town layout was like, but I've never seen it for real. I had pushed through a crowd of people wanting to see their loved one come home. The priestess had to part the crowd so I could get through. The fleshy people here are really tall and powerful. It was hard to get through them. Yeah, Pathadians, they average over 6 feet tall. I'm only 5'6". It's kind of hard to get through crowds that are that huge. Most of them dress like we do on Earth, with few exceptions. They do not wear those stupid jumpsuits like the Greys wear. Yeah, those things are stupid. Elvis is the only one that ever made jumpsuits hot, was Elvis. He's the only one ever made those things work. They look really human except for their ears, which are pointed like the elves in Lord of the Rings. That's Pathadians. Those are Pathadians. They're like elves. They also look like elves. The cities in the ship look very close to old styles of buildings we have all over the Earth. The only thing that was really amazing was how they built a ship so big, this whole island inside it. We were in a black car made to look like an old-style horse carriage. The cars are similar to the concept cars we have in showrooms today. I don't know about today, but back in 2000, the concept cars were pretty fucking cool. And that's kind of stuff they had. They do not have airplanes flying around, and there is only one island, so there's nowhere to fly to anyway. I was told by the priestess that dragons live in the mountains and elf-like beings dwell in forbidden valleys on the far shore. So this ship is huge. I'm talking, it's many miles, tens of miles across. If there's dragons living there, and I don't think I even saw any of that stuff. The island is a mystical place taken from a long-destroyed planet, far older than our universe. The one thing I saw a lot of were buses with ornate metal and woodwork on them. Whoever paid for this must have been rich. I saw houses much like those in any modern American suburb. They live in the past but work in the future. It seemed odd that their homes would be such a common design, but we probably live in the same types of houses here. Their shopping street is filled with shopping centers like here. I could go on forever about the larger city. After a half hour, we got to the tiny town called Merota, where the heraldic temple is. The town looked really old. The priestess said it was the original from the planet. This island was salvaged. So yeah, the city's older than the universe. It's gonna look old. They, of course, maintain the town and the laws prevented citizens from adding to the buildings, so everything is still the way it was when the town was built. The houses are wood framed, very intricate. The houses are built with details whenever something could be added to spoof up the area. The houses were all painted white, and some of them had vines growing on the posts on the front porch. It looked like a dream. It was a beautiful and well kept. We got through the downtown, which was only 2 blocks of shops. The shops were made from marble and built with statues on the corners and religious-looking scenes under the gables of the roofs facing the street. The sidewalks were built of large stone blocks, while the streets were paved with dark bricks. We made it 2 more blocks and turned off to a side street where the temple is by a river. We got out of the carriage thing and walked along a stone path that led to the front of the heraldic temple. The doors opened by themselves, which was really cool. As we walked inside, and another light entity was standing there waiting for us. We bowed to her, and she led us to the altar. The inside of the temple was big and had really tall windows that let in plenty of light. A priestess asked me not to talk about the interior of the temple because it was sacred. Only those... Not to talk about it? What? Of course I'm going to talk about it. It's freaking sacred. The priestess asked me to talk about the interior of the temple because it is sacred. Only those who ascend to the proper level should ever know what lay within. We did the rituals, and a gate opened up that is behind the altar. The whole back wall of the gate carved into it. The back wall opened up and revealed a bright light. I saw a brilliance like the sun shining into the great hall of the temple. The priestess stepped into the light and asked me to follow her. I did, and I felt as if I was weightless. The priestess held my hand and pulled me deeper into the light. All I could see was white light. And I was allowed to get pictures of it, of all things. That is the light. The actual light right there. That's an actual photo of light. The priestess said my camera would work again and told me this should be seen by all who know the Creator's will. So I did it, and it turned on. I saw the light fade, and it turned black as night. I had the camera on and pointed ahead of me, and I saw the light start to shine and started recording the journey into the tunnel of light. It was only a minute. It took only a minute, but it felt at one with creation. Oh, all right, fuck it. It felt like forever. I could hear voices and felt at one with creation. I could hear the thoughts of everyone on the ship and soon the whole galaxy. She said it would make sense to one like me to hear the thoughts because how close I was to journey's end. I stopped recording out of respect to the highest being that dwells inside the sacred place. I felt I should, and so I turned my camera off and stashed it in my pocket. I went so far that all things became one with me. I cannot really explain how I felt in there. There was no word for it, but I blacked out when I was in there. The priestess continued to talk to me even though I was out cold. I felt as if the whole universe was downloaded into my soul. I guess the memories will come back when I'm ready to know. After that, I must have been returned home to my bed. I hope I get the climax of this soon. I feel it will be very important. And here's another abduction. I actually left a mark on my neck. I'll get into that one later. Let me check stuff. That was a really long story. I still got some people watching. I wonder if I can actually add this. Is there a way to communicate with this site? Let's have a look. Let's see if there's a way. It's an individual, apparently. Okay, the last entry was today or tomorrow. It might be in this next time zone. Just hovered above us, black-eyed girl at our mall. Damn. Like I said, something about aliens and malls. And shopping centers. They like to shop, I guess. Well, today's the 16th. We still got 10 hours left. We got 9 hours left of this day. It's a bright light doing maneuvers. There's 9 hours into tomorrow. There's already 2 of these. Looking through a new telescope, strange blue light over Wales. Large egg-shaped silvery object at the front door. South Pacific radar sighting. Yellow silver sphere. Walking home from dance lessons. So yeah, this thing's getting stuff like every day. But how are stories added? More peak. Okay, I would like to take a minute to thank my wife for all the help and research and time and thought she has put into everything she has done for The Night Sky 2. She is more detailed than I am. I am certain that any of my readers who have been coming back constantly since 1990, god dang, this is that old? Constantly since 1999 have noticed an improvement in content. We can thank her for that. I just wanted to tell her, thank you, baby. I love you and I love you. And I would like to dedicate The Night Sky 2 to her. It says, we have in the past been labeled as sketch or strange, probably because I don't care if we are mobile friendly or not. But I am basic and not fancy. What you see is what you get. As I say, we pay everything out of our own pockets. We don't ask for donations. And not about to convert to WordPress or to have someone update the site to mobile friendly. So you're not going to be able to view this. You can view this on mobile, but you have to use your browser. If you want to finance this, be our guest. If not, don't criticize. The entire site is based on both our thoughts and beliefs. We have many. My wife is surfing the web. She does that very well. And about 6 separate books that are for sale that reference the night sky. She found 6 books that reference this site. So there's a lot on here. Okay, I took that as a huge compliment. Would like to take time to thank the authors. The book and author link are as follows. Acknowledged. A Perspective on UFOs, Aliens, and Crop Circles by Andrew Johnson. The Occult Connection, Identified Flying Objects by Ken Hudnall. That might actually be worth reading. Okay, let's just see if there's some contact in here. We list the books. We got UFOs, The Great Last Days Deception. We've got Aliens, UFOs, and Unexplained Encounters. These are still available on the original site, available through the Wayback Machine. I Believe in Paranormal Activity. The story, The Phone Call was real in my life. Can I right click? Okay, I guess I believe just as strongly in UFOs, not because of my personal experiences, but because it is just plain stupid to think that we could be the only intelligent beings in the vastness of the universe. Chuck even said that at the beginning of his stream yesterday. I don't believe we ever landed on. Yeah, I don't believe we ever landed on the moon, but if I'm wrong, I could be. See content and links elsewhere for site regarding lunar landings. Well, I do believe we landed on the moon. I actually know we did. Because there is actually pictures from newer missions of our probes, and actually there's a picture of the freaking rover and the lander sitting there on the moon. It says, we truly believe there are huge government cover-ups regarding UFOs, alien context, starting with Roswell. I think it goes back further. There's look to the 1800s. There's UFOs were called airships back then. That's something worth looking up because stories go back all the way to news, all the way through American history. We can't believe we trudged along for many years with little or no technological advances. Then Roswell happens, and we are overwhelmed with all kinds of neat breakthroughs in technology. About some story content, I am not a firm believer in. He's not a firm believer in Bigfoot, and that one's got a lot of compelling evidence. And I did something about that. I did watch a documentary about that and covered it on my Rumble about Bigfoot. He doesn't believe in Bigfoot or Chupacabra or any other such creatures. I do very little. I do very little about them. Oh, I can go into that a little bit more. It grows old when they're referred to as gods or aliens. There will be much occasional stories on them, very few though. We disagree that most articles written give more credence to these with occupations in a higher social status, scientists, educators, military, and so forth, as compared to common blue collar individuals, and have done my best to edit the articles not to reflect this. It says we believe an event or occurrence that is witnessed should be the same weight whether they are a housewife, babysitter, machinist, or rocket scientist. I personally also have edited out references to those who believe to be fakes, frauds, or just plain glory seekers, such as Whitney Strieber. I thought that was actually credible. I don't remember. I've heard the name. Okay, such as Whitley Strieber. I edit out any mention of him I see. His name shows often, like he's paid to have stories written or paid to have his name somehow added. Maybe terms $3 bill or wannabe come into play. Oh yeah, I think Whitley Strieber is like a major researcher or something. That's why he keeps showing up. I'm not the only one thinking he's a phony. Google him once. Don't Google him. Use a different search engine so you get the real shit. This is my opinion, not that of my wife. It may seem trite also. Even though we both are firm believers in extraterrestrial activity, we have a hard time understanding all the mention of color lights on the crafts. We just don't understand and never will why or how a vehicle capable of intergalactic travel would incorporate such lighting. What use would it serve? Would they be visible at light speed? Who knows? Maybe they just like looking pretty. Shit, I would put bling on my ship. I would put bling all over it. My wife and myself have no problem if you would like to use any of our content. We feel it's a compliment. We run the site because we devoted to the topics. I hope our visitors appreciate. We ran absolutely no advertisements. We, to the best of our knowledge, are only site that do this. So far, yeah, they are. Even sites claiming to run by aliens have ads on the side or sell something. No annoying pop-ups or any other distractions. We have been approached many times to do so, and just as many times we say no, it isn't happening. We remove the email address to prevent this. We pay all fees out of our own pocket. We don't beg for help or donations to keep the lights on. If anyone's truly dedicated to the cause, they wouldn't be begging or running annoying ads to receive the readers or pay per clicks. That's just plain tacky. Man up, guys. We currently average between 15,000 and 16,000 visits a month. About 28% of those are returned multiple times. We are happy with those numbers and hope to keep them. Thank you. And this was modified last year, about 13 months ago. So there is no way to actually contact these people. Rome, Wisconsin. This took place in 1962 in Rome, Wisconsin. The phone call. Apparently this is true to this guy. So I'll take a look around and see what's going on. If you're still there, Biggie, it's cool. I'm about to drop. After I get done with this, I'll drop the link and I'll let you on. 1962, when I was a young girl. I guess this is it's not their personal. It's happened to the person who made the site, but this is not their actual incident. This is someone else's similar story. In 1962, when I was a young girl, still living at home, I experienced a very odd occurrence. We lived in a very old house. The house was wired for only one telephone, which hung on the wall in the kitchen. This was the year my maternal grandmother had suffered several strokes and required a lot of care. Since my grandmother never learned to drive, my mother would drive to their home and take my grandmother shopping and help her take care of grandpa. One Saturday morning, we went grocery shopping before she drove to their home. It was a rainy day, so I was left to take care of my two younger sisters and brother while she was gone. My sister and my brother were playing upstairs. The telephone was ringing, so I went to answer it. I said hello, and I was stunned to listen to the conversation that was taking place between my grandmother and my younger brother, the same brother who was upstairs with no wires to hook a telephone to. I won I remember clearly the conversation, although not word for word. I clearly heard my brother say hello. Then my grandmother was asking if my mother could come to the telephone. He told her she was shopping, but that Aline, myself, was home. My grandmother asked my brother to call me to the telephone. I would hear them calling, Aline, telephone. I was shocked. I hung up the telephone and went upstairs and told my brother, who was only 9 years old at the time, what had just happened. I am sure he thought I was crazy, but cannot remember what he said. Then I went back downstairs and called my grandmother. She said, I just called over there and Larry was supposed to bring you to the phone, but he hung up on me. I tried to tell her what had just experienced, but she didn't understand, but then neither did I. I often remember what would have happened had I not been so spooked and stayed on the line rather than hanging up. I would have hurt myself as well. Oh my god, that would have been trippy. Like calling a different dimension. That's hella weird. Keep in mind, this was 1962, very rural area. Extension phones were a rarity, and we couldn't dial one for a long distance. Everything was through an operator then, and party lines were the norm. Oh, that would be so creepy. Okay, that was interesting. So we're going to go. I'm going to open up the lines. Let's open up the lines and see what kind of a shit show we get today. It does change every time. Oh, Minnie and Biggie, if you're there, you know what to do. It's there, but let me see if I can lock this thing. Can't even get to the dots. They're covered up by this thing covers them up. Let me add something. There's gotta be a way to raise that up so I can highlight it. Oh, there we go. It should be up there. We can start getting the shit show going. Okay, I'm live. Let's get people on. Okay. Like fire. Is California on fire? Let's see this. No, it's not overcast. It's kind of hazy, so maybe there is a fire. It's still loading. That mini will like that. Oh, help me. Gotta get water. Water. There we go. I'll make some tea. Oh, this will get the shit show going. And here. He's not even on, so it doesn't even matter. And the other one, this is a shit show. Okay, I guess I can turn that off for now. It's actually sunny right now. Okay, I'm kind of done with my part for now. So if nobody's there, I'll give another, 10 minutes. Maybe we can watch something instead. I can just watch. I don't know what we want. We've got, it's impossible to believe it's really happening. We've got migrants rush to New York City as U.S. border crisis. I don't know. I think I should do Cash Jordan. She usually got good stuff. Hunt giant and weird prehistoric deer. That's 20 minutes. This is 17 for. Okay, let me share screen. Let me put this back on stage because we're gonna watch Cash Jordan. New York's still having a migrant crisis. So we'll cover this for now. Come on, this thing should have the power to do it.
All proponents of this new policy say.
Start it over.
Policy. His order authorizes U.S. immigration officials at the southern border to deport large numbers of migrants without processing their asylum claims, and is leading to some confusion.
So many people trying to enter America can now be deported, and while proponents of this new policy say it may lessen congestion at the southern border, critics say it's only going to encourage people afraid of being deported to flee to sanctuary cities like New York.
Full freight train carrying hundreds of migrants now speeding toward the U.S. border. Those on the front lines warn it's a literal embodiment of the challenges we face.
Sorry that it's loud.
Hundreds of people rallied today in the city against Biden's executive order restricting the amount of asylum seekers who come into the country.
While demonstrators say it's an attack on migrants, others say the president's executive order is necessary.
He said he was going to support the immigrant community.
The immigrant community is under attack by both parties.
It's sunburn. I was at a Trump rally last week. So right now I'm staying in the cave and letting everything heal so I can be ready for Pride next 2 weeks. And I'll just get burned again. So that's 2 days worth of sun instead of just 1 day. So yeah, it's all red. So let me get back to this news thing with some migrants. I really feel sorry for these people. They think they're going to live their dream. They end up homeless in the freaking streets of New York. And they started doing this shit in January. They started kicking people out of hotels in January. It's really screwed up. New York City is not a place to be freaking homeless. So let me put this back and.
A little too late. I mean, after millions have gotten through, we have a lot of work to do to deal with the people that we have here who are committing crime.
And while the president's new executive order can shut the border down, it does make some exceptions. For example, it does not apply to legal immigrants or to unaccompanied minors.
It's not secure. They're coming. We still have our pursuits. The cartel has not shut its operation down, and they've had no intent. They have the will to go ahead and exploit our border.
On Wednesday alone, 2,000 migrants were apprehended. The new reality appearing to change the minds of Americans on the best way to respond.
So a controversial new ban on border crossings is now in effect, causing many to question the future of the asylum crisis. But although critics on the left and on the right have problems with this new policy, what nobody's talking about is that although it might actually decrease migration at the southern border, it may encourage it to America's largest sanctuary city. Because even though the border might be tougher to cross, once you get to New York, your immigration status no longer matters, because this city denies no one access to its incredibly generous safety net, which provides temporary room and board for single adults, along with unlimited room and board for families with children. Plus, there's access to education, healthcare, and prepaid debit cards to help with nutrition. And one of the most controversial sanctuary policies in New York is that if the police arrest somebody who's wanted by federal immigration, they don't hold on to that person, and they don't tell ICE that they have them in custody. And although proponents say this policy is designed to shield immigrants from unfair or unwarranted law enforcement actions like deportation, when you combine this with New York's willingness to provide every one of life's necessities along with caseworkers to expedite applications for asylum and work permits, critics say New York will continue to remain a top destination for immigrants regardless of whether or not the border is open, closed, or both. And that brings us to the real reason New York City's asylum crisis is far from over, because just as the federal government clamps down on the southern border, activists here in New York are rallying against this new executive action, saying it's bad for the country. Meanwhile, New York City continues expanding its arsenal of hotels, which are being converted into shelters, a policy which has reduced the supply of hotel rooms in the city by 20%. But although it looks like New York is digging in its heels for a long drawn-out ordeal, critics say the fact that we're welcoming asylum seekers at the same time there's a border crackdown is only going to encourage the people our government would want to deport to come here instead of going home, which critics say might make New York a destination not only for asylum seekers, economic migrants, but also for potential fugitives. So here we have buses, the cheapest way to travel the country from the southern border and come to a sanctuary city like New York, which is exactly what our elected officials here in the city and our elected officials at the federal level say they don't want to happen. But that's the opposite of what many people here in New York think right now. We've got protesters taking to the streets over this border ban, complaining that the new restrictions on immigration are bad for America, and they're not exactly being quiet about it.
Over 200 day laborers and low-wage workers, many of them migrants, danced and rallied in Manhattan's Herald Square Thursday around a giant shipping container they say is a symbol of the border wall. Earlier Thursday,
as you can see, people here are not too happy about this, and they're going so far as to call it an attack on immigrants. And although the city's rapidly running out of resources to humanely care for the asylum seekers who are already here, the protesters insist that there should be more immigration to New York City, not less. But what many of the protesters don't realize is that this new set of restrictions still allows for regular migration into the country, so much so that critics of the plan say it won't actually do anything. And the protesters may be forgetting that this is a federal policy. New York City's local policies have not changed. The right to shelter for anyone who wants it is still there and hasn't been diminished, which means the safety net critics say is responsible for this growing crisis here in New York is going to remain intact. But there's a problem with these federal restrictions that could cause the asylum crisis here in New York to drag out much longer than city officials are prepared for.
it comes after President Joe Biden's executive action this week significantly restricting asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border, temporarily closing it if a daily average of 2,500 is met.
4 years ago, when he was running for president, he said he was going to support the immigrant community,
City, state, and federal.
So what you won't hear anywhere else is that the protesters, they've got a right to be upset about this once you look beneath the surface. Because although it may mean less immigrants end up coming to New York City overall, those who do make it are going to need to stay for much longer than those who've come in the past. And that's because of the hidden ramifications of this new policy. First of all, this new secure border plan allows asylum seekers to enter at approved points of entry as long as the 7-day average of crossings does not exceed 1,500 people. Now, protesters are upset about this new plan because prior to this action, 3,500 people a week were crossing on average. But the real problem is what's going to happen to the people who came all the way to the southern border and now can't come in this week. These are people who've traveled for months to get all the way to the point of entry at the border itself. And now they're being told you can't come in after they spent thousands of dollars and a lot of time to get there. What do you think they're going to do? Well, before we uncover whether or not this new policy is causing more harm than good, understand that critics of this policy are already saying it's going to put families and children at risk, and it's going to present a business opportunity to the worst elements of society, namely cartels and gangs, who can now manipulate people into believing they have safe passage options for them around the U.S.'s new border rules and Border Patrol itself. Critics...
And you also need to know these illegals, they're coming into New York. They're not able to get a job. They're not allowed to work. So when they get kicked out of they're only allowed to stay. It's like the hotels, the previous video this guy did, the hotels they're staying at, they're only allowed to stay there for 30 days as a single adult. But as a family, they get to be there for 60 days. But after that, they get kicked out of the hotel, and then they have to wait in line again to get back in. So they're not able to even house all these people. So they're just sitting on the streets a lot of the time, and they're unable to work. And that's why the cartels and stuff are hiring them, because they can't work legally. So they get the delivery. They can do the delivery jobs, or they used to. But New York banned something to do with mopeds or something. They did some law with the mopeds. You have to have like a license now for like even smaller vehicles. You have to have even for stuff. It's like they're almost down to like making licenses for electric bikes. They're almost that far now. But people can't work. They can't earn a living. And they're being, and Biden said, search the border, or you come here. But you get here, there's nothing there. You get there, there's nothing.
They not only could this put the desperate and the vulnerable in an even worse position than they were already in, they say it's pretty much guaranteed to happen because right now New York is expanding its right to shelter options for people who might be on their way here while this crackdown is taking place. Critics have two major complaints with the new border plan. First, there are exceptions to the ban which critics find unacceptable, and second, New York City continues to expand its sanctuary apparatus, which they say acts as a magnet to attract the wrong kind of migration.
The new policy went into effect yesterday morning and is leading to some confusion, especially among migrants.
We don't 100% understand it. How could they possibly understand what's going on? They probably haven't even heard of it. It's not like there's radio or TV out.
So here's where those two issues end up working together. Right now, you've got thousands of people out in the desert who just found out about this, and they're being told, no, you can't come in, you have to wait. Yet everyone there still has it in their hearts to come to a city like New York where they can get a fresh start, which means it would be ridiculous to assume that these people are just going to turn around, pack their things, and spend money they don't have to get home. And the likely outcome of this policy is that people are just going to wait around until it's their turn to go through an approved point of entry. Or worse, they might not be able to wait that long. While these people are waiting, they'll likely be approached by gangs who want to get money from them in exchange for sneaking them into the country, creating another front in America's massive humanitarian border crisis. And the likelihood of this happening is so strong, mainstream sources are already blaring it.
The actual paths that people have available, which are very narrow to ask for asylum, it's very hard to compete with the misinformation that's out there from smugglers who have a very well-oiled business running.
Yeah, I bet a profitable business, so you know.
So what they're saying here is that everybody who's now stuck at the border and can't move from their position while they wait indefinitely is now going to have to find a gang to sneak them into the country. And you know what that's going to look like? It's going to look like this 60 Minutes report from a few months ago where gang members helped people sneak in through a hole in the fence. And this is actually something critics on both sides of this agree on, that there now may be more unofficial entries than official entries. Because if you're out in the middle of the desert with no water and no supplies and a gang comes along and offers you a way in, critics say it's going to be hard for people in a situation like that to say no.
You hear stories of people in the most desperate condition. I talked to a group of men who had come from, and women, from the Dominican Republic. They were not the people who would be able to get asylum. They are what some call economic migrants, people who need to work, who are not getting work opportunities in their countries, who might have family members.
So while there's now speculation that this new policy may try and fuel unofficial crossings, there are provisions to try and eliminate that. First, if people try to cross the border on their way to a sanctuary city like New York and they don't do it officially they could be banned from seeking asylum. And if that happens, your ability to get a work permit and start building your new life is in severe jeopardy. And that poses a real problem for New York, because if we're accepting people into our shelter system who can never end up getting a job because they didn't come into the country in an official manner, they might need to be in the shelters for a long time until that gets sorted out. A lot longer than the 30 days single adults have before the city kicks them out. Yet this news report also brings up the idea of economic migrants, people coming to the country not to seek asylum, but just to get a job and start working, likely in jobs where they can do it off the books, like in construction or at a restaurant. Even though these jobs might be very unsafe, might not be legal, to many people they still represent a better opportunity than staying in their home country, which is definitely an upsetting situation. But what critics are really upset about is that there are loopholes in this border ban that they say might make the whole crisis much worse and won't actually do anything to secure the border in the first place.
And while the president's new executive order can shut the border down, it does make some exceptions. For example, it does not apply to legal immigrants or to unaccompanied minors. This is prompting criticism.
So what are these exceptions? Well, first, if you're already a citizen and you enter at a port of entry, of course they'll let you in. And this also applies to unaccompanied minors. We don't want children being denied entry at the border. That could be a very bad situation. But this is where critics say the new policy already starts to fall apart. What if somebody lies about their age just so they can get on a bus and make their way to a sanctuary city like New York? Critics say this could be creating a situation where it's almost impossible to identify the people who are here, saying that there's someone who they might not be. Critics say this is creating a situation where you're going to have young men who are actually in their 20s claiming to be teenagers who lost their parents and got separated from them just so that they can get help getting to a place like New York. But believe it or not, it's the other humanitarian exception to the border ban that has critics all riled up, because victims of extreme trafficking will also be able to get an exception. Now, of course, it would be the worst thing in the world to have people who are kidnapped remain at the border where they could be exploited continuously by gangs. But critics say folks will now be tempted to make up stories of kidnappings that never actually happened. Either way, the presence of gangs at the border means migration to New York City is not going to stop anytime soon.
It's not secure. They're coming. We still have our pursuits. The cartel has not shut its operation down, and they've had no intent. They have the will to go ahead and exploit our border. Maybe look.
This is just insane. I wonder if my city is doing any of this. I'm not really finding out anything about here. But when this episode of Cash Jordan ends, I'm gonna cut the stream. There's nothing going on. So after this is end, I'm done.
So the real reason this border closure is going to make things worse for a place like New York has to do with the fact that once people come here, they're going to have less options than they ever had before if they use a gang to do it. And unfortunately, coming to America's largest sanctuary city, but being barred from having people permanently in the criminal underworld. And the biggest problem New York is having with it, asylum crisis, is that people in the shelters are finding it very tough to leave and get on their feet because the city itself is so expensive. And even though that's true, it's still better for many people to come here and try to find a job, even if it's not a job that you or I watching this might consider to be our best option in life, because it's so much better than the situation that they're in. Yet all this demand for access to New York City has turned the shelters here into revolving door operations, evicting folks who've been here for just 30 days so new folks can take their place and then be evicted to make room for the people who come after them. And this is brought up another issue for the local activists.
That is so. He did talk about this being a scam as well. The city owns the buildings. They're doing this. These shelters. The city owns a lot of shelters because you'd be like, I don't know. Let's say you own a hotel and you try to open a shelter like privately. The city will shut you down, and they have shut down shelters that are not. But the city opens a shelter in a warehouse in a toxic part of town. It's somehow okay. I should pull that episode up. I might cover it. I might just, I don't know. I really don't want to be on here forever. So after this episode ends, you guys can add Cash Jordan yourselves. Let me just give you the link to the video. You guys can add him yourselves and dig through his channel. He's got a lot of, it's really screwed up what's going on with illegals and stuff. They're coming up here and they're coming up here to live in squalor and hell. It's really bad. It's just nothing's going to get done until November. Shit. Actually, not till next January. Trump has to win. Then he'll put a stop to this. But right now, these people are just going through it.
here to be upset about, because although 80% of New Yorkers say they support right to shelter, what they don't support is the fact that the people who are here can't start working immediately, even though that's how U.S. immigration law works. Which brings up a big question. Why is the U.S. so intent on allowing people to migrate here who are unable to help themselves once they arrive? So here we have a line of delivery bikes, and they are out in front of one of the city's shelters here in Midtown, the Row Hotel, which has 1,000 rooms. And the delivery bikes are here because they're part of an underground economy where identities are bought and rented out so that people can take delivery jobs without work permission. And the reason this is happening is because many of the folks that are in the shelters are being told they have to get jobs and move out and be self-sufficient, yet that's easier said than done when you can't exactly go apply for a job at Goldman Sachs. But why is it so hard for people to get jobs here legally if they've all been brought here with the intent to work?
This bill, the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 that I will sign in a few minutes, is the most comprehensive reform of our immigration laws since 1952.
They made it impossible to hire someone who was in the United States illegally or without employment authorization.
1986. That was almost 40 years ago. That means this entire time, New York City has had an asylum crisis that welcomes people here that have had to jump through pretty much every loophole they can find to get on their feet. It's not easy for them. And this is also the reason why so many people are finding it near impossible to get out of the shelters once they move in. And many people say this is part of the reason why we have a crisis here. It's illegal for folks to start working once they show up, and the only jobs they can get are jobs like this, riding a delivery bike, or working under the table at a restaurant, or in some sort of construction job. And since this has been the way immigration works in this country for a very long time, it seems kind of strange that people here are protesting those very same laws when the repercussions of those, people being stuck in a revolving door system that can't really help them, come to fruition. And honestly, you can't blame the asylum seekers. They're coming from parts of the world where there isn't enough food, and where economic opportunities of any kind are so hard to come by, it's worth risking everything to travel dangerously, in many cases, to a place like New York City. And what's fascinating about this is, although New Yorkers say they support right to shelter, there are protests over the shelters all the time. And the protests come from pretty much every angle. If you put a shelter in a very nice neighborhood, the residents immediately come out and say, oh, this is inhumane, it's not the right place for them, you should move the shelter. And then if you put people in a hotel like this, people come out and say, oh, it's too expensive, you shouldn't do something like that. But wait, we already tried to save money, but we can't. That's why we have the hotel. And this is especially interesting to observe over at the city's 4,000 bed mega shelter in Brooklyn, which takes up an entire city block, where residents are complaining to the city about people's inability to work, as if this is something local officials can change when it is a federal policy. But there could be another reason why we aren't seeing a massive push for work authorization, and it's because some people say the people who've come here won't be able to get jobs and adequately mesh with our economy. Yet many of the people the city's now caring for moved into these shelters with the intention that they were going to get help getting a job. Yet 30 days after that happens, many people find out.
A bar. There's a bar across the street from that huge shelter. I wonder if they could afford to drink there.
That things didn't work out the way they seem to have been promised. And obviously there are many reasons for this, most of which are beyond the city's control. First, English isn't everyone's first language, which automatically eliminates many employment opportunities. Second, the U.S. is an advanced service-based economy. We don't have the same types of manufacturing jobs that we used to. And a lot of today's employment opportunities require computer skills.
You know what that sign actually means? If you're a criminal, nobody here can stop you. That's what that sign actually reads.
And this exposes the real problem with this whole system. The people that are coming here need a lot longer than 30 days in a shelter in order to integrate with New York's economy. Yet New York appears dead set on inviting people here without the ability to provide for themselves or the ability to get it after they come here and get locked in to life in a country that doesn't have the tools to help them, and may have indicated at one point that it did. And even if you were to grant work authorization to every single person in every single shelter today, there wouldn't necessarily be employment opportunities for every single person tomorrow. Yes, we've got shortages of electricians, welders, truck drivers, you name it, but all of those jobs require sophisticated training. And this could be part of the reason why we aren't seeing a massive push at the federal level for mass work authorization, which is why critics say that the new border ban may solve some problems, yes, but it may also cause new problems nobody's prepared for, especially sanctuary cities like New York. Is that what's happening? Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
That's all, folks. Well, I'll come back on later tonight. Might do some more alien-related stuff. Shit. I might do aliens. I might actually do a channeling session. Just, I don't know, just see me channeling, I guess. Not to watch. I'll probably mumble to you guys a little bit tonight, so we'll see what happens. Okay, well, I'll set it up. I guess I'll set up for tonight, and hopefully I remember to get on even. Shit. I'll set it up right after my shower. I'll probably, if I remember to do that, until 8:30, 9:30. Somewhere in there. So I'll just come back on randomly. So it doesn't seem like even if I schedule this, it doesn't really go anywhere. And I can stop the screen. And I will see you guys later. Have a good day.